afternoon, and welcome to the first of our office hour series for the Minnesota Office of Cannabis Management's 2025 licensing application cycle. My name is Maron Melican, and I serve as the Outreach Director here at the OCM. I am here alongside many of my colleagues from OCM who will be tuned in and tracking your questions throughout this presentation. For general awareness, this session will be recorded and posted on the OCM YouTube page for your review at a later date. So if you don't capture everything that we say today, you will be able to review it at a later date as soon as we get it captioned and put onto our YouTube. I would also like to preface this presentation by stating that this information in this presentation is not legal advice. Please review Minnesota Chapters 342 and/or consult with an attorney regarding the various license types prior to making any specific decisions, especially ones that may be legal. The information in this presentation is intended to provide a general overview of permitted activities under the various license types, and I will say it's not an exhaustive list either. It is also meant to provide you with resources and guidance materials to help you navigate through the licensing process. And so we're hoping that we're able to provide you with all of this, that you're also able to review this material afterwards. I'll refer to a lot of definitions. I'll refer to a lot of guidance documents, but the goal is that you'll be able to take this later on and dig in a bit deeper. So to get us started, I will walk us through a general agenda for today's session. We'll begin with providing an overview of the 3 license types on the calendar for the day. We'll discuss key terms and various endorsements, the differences between the 3 license types. We'll walk through application common mistakes and end our programming going through the questions that you submitted in advance of today's event. I want to thank all of you for submitting these questions as they really help the OCM understand which areas of our guidance are still unclear, and they give us the opportunity to clarify. I also want to note that you all submitted several questions that both helped guide the creation of this presentation, and many of which will be covered during the Q&A portion at the end. The Q&A function for this session will be used to update our OCM FAQ page. So if you are able to submit any, or if you'd like to submit questions during the session, we have folks that will be reviewing those and be taking them back to our team so that we can make sure that we update them in our guidance. But for the majority of the QA session today, we'll really be focusing on the pre-submitted questions that folks sent with their registration. So to kind of ground us and get us started a bit more, I want to speak a little bit about the Office of Cannabis Management. So the OCM was established to promote public health and welfare, protect public safety, eliminate the illicit market for cannabis flower and cannabis products, meet the market demand for cannabis flower and cannabis products, promote a craft industry for cannabis flower and cannabis products, prioritize growth and recovery in communities that have experienced disproportionate negative impact from cannabis prohibition. As a regulatory office, we are essentially tasked with the licensing of the adult use cannabis industry, which is why we're here today, to be able to provide you with guidance as you may be seeking licensure. Before we get too far into the licensing portion of this presentation, I wanted to highlight a recent announcement from the OCM. The office announced the Can Renew Community Restoration Grant program to help restore communities disproportionately impacted by drug enforcement. A request for proposal is available on our website for those interested in applying for grant funds. I do want to point out that this is specifically for community restoration and is not necessarily a business grant. To learn more about other technical assistance grants, you can check out the Office of Cannabis Management's website, where we have a link to the Department of Employment and Economic Development, where they host a number of business-specific technical assistance grants. So to ground us a little bit more in specifically within licensing, I wanted to highlight our current licensing cycle. As you can see, this cycle began with the social equity application verification from January 15th through January 30th, followed by the opening of the license application window on February 18th. This window will be closed on March 14th, followed by a May to June timeline for lotteries for the CATS licenses. This timeline can be found on our website on mn.gov/OCM under the business tab. But overall, I just want to highlight this as a good tool to monitor where we are in the process and to be able to continue to track your progress within the process. The next resource that I am going to make sure that we share that is already posted on our website actually, but we'll make sure that once this is posted on the YouTube, there's a link to this graphic as well. But this graphic can be found on the OCM Cannabis Business Licensing webpage. This graphic is meant to help you further understand your path to cannabis licensing in Minnesota. I would call it a step-by-step guide through the various stages of licensing. As you can see, we are focused in the dark and lighter blue boxes, beginning at step 1 at kind of the top of this guide. However, this tool also walks you through some of the details for final submissions and local government approval, pre-licensure inspection, among other items along the way. Again, this is a handy tool to just help illustrate the many steps it takes to get to official license issuance. And so where we're focused right now is kind of that dark blue section where it says step 1, start here, and going into the light blue section. But as you will see, as you get into the green, those are some of the next phases in the pathway to getting a license. So now I'm going to walk us through a license overview where we'll take a look at the microbusiness, mezzobusiness, and retailer licenses. We'll discuss their allowable activities. We'll talk about what licenses that can be held simultaneously. We'll walk through endorsements, and we'll take a look at some of the key differences between the different license types. So I wanted to ground us ahead of time with a few key terms. I am going to be mentioning these terms a few times, and so I want you to be able to fully understand them as I continue to mention them. These terms are also listed in a lot of our guidance, and so it is helpful. I will also mention we do have a list of key terms that can be found in a guidance document on our website called the OCM Qualified Applicant Guide to Obtaining a License. But to get us started, a license. It's an official authorization to conduct lawful cannabis business operations. To begin lawful operations, licenses must be active and coincide with necessary endorsements from OCM and local retail registrations, if applicable. The next term that I want to focus on is endorsement. Endorsement being an authorization granted by OCM to conduct a specific cannabis business activity, i.e. cultivation operations. An active license with an endorsement allows for a business to begin operations for that activity, except for retail activity. Mezzo businesses and micro businesses must obtain the necessary endorsements for each activity they wish to participate in, with multiple endorsements required overall. To begin retail operations, a license with an active license and retail endorsement must obtain a local registration and submit it to OCM. So these are just terms that I wanted to make sure that we started off kind of grounding ourselves in it and ensuring that we understand them before I get into the next steps of the slides where we dig into the different types of endorsements that are available. So we'll get started with the cannabis microbusiness license. The cannabis microbusiness license can grow, make, sell, and buy cannabis, including plants and seedlings, lower potency hemp edibles, and hemp-derived consumer products. They can also have an on-site space where customers can use cannabis. This is an uncapped license, and applicants will not be subject to a lottery. An additional license that could be held simultaneously with the cannabis microbusiness license is the cannabis event organizer license. I do want to highlight that the cannabis event organizer license is not up in this current licensing cycle right now, but we do have some guidance on our website for when it will be held a bit later on in the year. So, when thinking about the cannabis microbusiness license, there are a number of allowable activities. A cannabis microbusiness license can operate a single retail location. They can also allow on site consumption on a portion of its premises where customers can consume edible cannabis products and lower potency hemp edibles. A cannabis micro license can grow up to 5,000 square feet of plant canopy indoors or up to 1/2 acre of mature flowering plants outdoors. A cannabis micro license can transfer only between facilities under the same license holder. And lastly, a cannabis micro license can sell immature cannabis plants and seedlings, adult use cannabis flower and products, lower potency hemp edibles, hemp derived consumer products, and other products authorized by law to other cannabis businesses and customers. Note, many of these activities will require an endorsement, which we will cover on that next slide. There are a number of available endorsements for micro businesses, as you can see on the screen. And so we'll just kind of walk through a few of through the ones that are listed. The available endorsements, for example, for cultivation is the medical cannabis cultivation. For extraction and concentration is the medical cannabis processor. For production of consumer products is the medical cannabis processor. For retail operations is the medical cannabis retailer. For edible cannabinoid products handler endorsement, that is an additional endorsement that's available. And then one thing to also note here is that on-site consumption is only available for micro businesses. Another thing that I also want to name here is specifically to retail operations. While we require a retail endorsement, you must also have a local registration for Minnesota Statute 342.22. And so that is another step that is separate from the Office of Cannabis Management's operations as well. So for the ability to have that retail operations, you must also have that local retail registration. So now we will proceed towards the Mezzobusiness license. So the cannabis Mezzobusiness license can grow, make, sell, and buy cannabis, including plants and seedlings, lower potency hemp edibles, and hemp-derived consumer products. This, however, is a capped license, and applicants will be selected through a vetted lottery. There are 100 licenses available, 50 of which to social equity verified and 50 to all applicants. An additional license that could be held simultaneously with the cannabis Mezzobusiness license is the cannabis event organizer license. And as I mentioned earlier as well, the cannabis event organizer license is not up right now in this current licensing cycle. However, we do have guidance on our website for when we will proceed to opening up for cannabis event organizer licenses at a later date. So when thinking about the cannabis Mezzobusiness license, there are a number of allowable activities here. A cannabis Mezzobusiness license can operate up to 3 retail locations. They can grow up to 15,000 square feet of plant canopy indoors or up to 1 acre of mature flowering plants outdoors. They can transport only between facilities under the same license holder, and they can sell immature cannabis plants and seedlings, adult use cannabis flower and products, lower potency hemp edibles, hemp derived consumer products, and other products authorized by law to other cannabis businesses and customers. Note, as stated before, many of these activities will require that endorsement, which again we'll cover in this next slide for endorsements that are associated with the Mezzobusiness license. So as you guys can see, there are a number of available endorsements for the Mezzobusiness license that you can see on your screen. For cultivation, there is the medical cannabis cultivation endorsement. For extraction and concentration, there's the medical cannabis processor. For production of consumer products, there's the medical cannabis processor. For retail operations, there's the medical cannabis retailer. And in addition, there is the edible cannabinoid product handler endorsement. You must also have local retail registration in order to do retail operations per Minnesota Statute 342.22 for the Mezzobusiness license as well. Another thing to note here is that Mezzobusinesses must obtain at least 2 endorsements within 18 months of licensure. Our third license type that we'll focus on is the retailer license. Cannabis retailers can sell packaged cannabis products to the general public and medical patients with a medical cannabis retailer endorsement. They can buy cannabis, including plants and seedlings, lower potency hemp edibles, and hemp-derived consumer products from other cannabis businesses and sell them to customers. This is a capped license, and applicants will be selected through a vetted lottery. For this license, license type, there will be 150 licenses available, 75 to social equity verified and 75 to all applicants. Additional licenses that may be held simultaneously with the retailer license include the cannabis event organizer and the cannabis delivery service. As mentioned about the cannabis event organizer, it is not up during this current licensing cycle right now, but there will be more information to come on that timeline. One additional item to note, per this license type, the cannabis retailer, you must also have a local registration per Minnesota Statutes 342.22. So this is the local registration is another process that you will have to be able to complete in order to fulfill this license. When thinking about the cannabis retailer license, there are a number of allowable activities. A cannabis retailer license can operate up to 5 retail locations. However, no person, cooperative, or business may hold a license to own or operate more than 1 retail business in 1 city and 3 retail businesses in 1 county. They can also sell immature cannabis plants and seedlings, adult use cannabis flower and adult use products, lower potency hemp edibles, hemp derived consumer products, and other products authorized by law to adults over 21 years of age and registered medical patients. As with the other license types, activities require various endorsements, which we'll go over in this next slide. The endorsements available for the retail license include medical cannabis retailer and edible cannabinoid product handler endorsement. And as you can see with that asterisk, there is for the medical cannabis retailer, you must also have local retail registration per retail location and retail activity. Now we've had the opportunity to talk about the various license types individually. On the screen is a table of some of the differences between the 3 license types that we're discussing today. We thought that this could be a helpful resource as you're really thinking about maybe which license that you're thinking about seeking and really trying to understand what are these different license types and, how does this really fit in with, what I'm thinking my potential operations can be. So just looking at it, when it comes to the ability to cultivate, the cannabis microbusiness and the cannabis mezzobusiness have the ability to cultivate. When you think about can it operate multiple retail locations? The cannabis microbusiness can only operate 1 retail location, whereas the mezzobusiness and the retailer are able to have multiple retail locations, that being 3 for a mezzobusiness and 5 for a retailer. The next question is, or the next point is, can offer on-site consumption. The microbusiness license is the only one that is able to offer on-site consumption. when you are thinking about whether you are seeking a license that is subject to a lottery. The micro-business license is not subject to a lottery, so it is an uncapped license, whereas the Mezzobusiness and the retailer license are subject to the lottery. The next point being, can manufacture low-potency hemp edibles. As you guys can see, the micro-business and the Mezzobusiness do have that ability, whereas the retailer doesn't. Then the next point being, can apply for an event organizer license. You can see that the various license types have the ability to have that event organizer be able to also hold that event organizer license. And then can apply for a delivery license. As you can see, the only one that is able to also hold that license type is the retailer license. I also want to note some of the asterisks at the bottom of this, and this is really touching on the piece that I was mentioning earlier about there are a number of allowable activities. However, per the allowable activities, they require an endorsement. So cultivation requires obtaining a medical cannabis cultivation endorsement. Micro businesses and meso businesses are required to obtain a retail operation endorsement. And then manufacturing low potency hemp edible products requires obtaining an edible cannabinoid product handler endorsement. And so these are things to always just keep in mind as well as you are thinking about your future business decisions and thinking about what are the differences between these different license types and identifying which one you really want to seek in this licensing cycle. All right, so one of the last items I wanted to cover is our license overview. Or in our license overview is the cost of each license type. The license types have an application fee, initial license fee, and annual renewal license fee. Application fees, initial licensing fees, and renewal licensing fees are non-refundable per Minnesota Statutes 34211. I also want to note that there is the potential to have fees from local government for local retail registration. So these are specifically the fees as associated for each license type with the Office of Cannabis Management. However, local retail registration may also have a fee, and that is per local government. So as you can see, there are various fees for these different license types, micro businesses being their application fee at $500. And meso business at $5,000 and retailer at $2,000. And then of course, the various initial license fee and the annual renewal license fee. So again, items to just keep in mind, considerations to keep in mind as you are identifying which license you want to go for. Okay, so now we are going to pivot into our application and from our application and guidance and into some common mistakes to avoid and items to consider when completing your application. So to get us started, common mistake number one, leaving sections blank. Throughout the application, you may find items you think do not apply to you yet. Despite this, please still provide a preliminary plan or verify if the requested information is a requirement. I think the point that we really want to make here is don't leave sections blank. Fill it out as much as possible. OCM does not require you have a physical location at the time of initial application, but we require preliminary plans for items such as compliance with building codes and federal state regulations, planned square footage or authorized activities, and utility plans. And so this is really just thinking about as you are approaching your application and you think that something doesn't apply to you, please make sure that you're reading the instructions and any of the requested information and providing that. And when it's always better to provide more information than less. Common mistake number two is not providing detailed information. When completing your application, verify that you have submitted all the information that OCM requires. Make sure to include even minor details if OCM has it listed. Include details such as contact information, required personal information, Avoid general statements and instead provide line-by-line details. It is better to provide too much information rather than keeping a section blank. And so again, as I mentioned on the last slide as well, make sure to include information, even the minor details, to ensure that there aren't any sections that are left blank within your application. And common mistake number 3, not disclosing all the owners or managers. OCM requires all applicants to disclose their ownership model and provides details of each owner's involvement. As you complete your application, please make sure you are including all the requested information and are consistent throughout the application with the listed individuals. Even if someone has a minimal stake or role in the proposed business, we advise applicants to include them in their application. And so this is really about being consistent, making sure that in the various locations that you are disclosing your ownership and various owners' involvement, ensuring that you're consistent within that and that you're disclosing all of that information, even if an individual has a minimal stake or role in the proposed business. And so now I want to speak a little bit both about some of the guidance that we have and just some OCM recommended actions to kind of get you, help you get started after being able, once you receive this presentation and after leaving this presentation. So we have a resource guide called the Cannabis Business License Application Review and Qualifications Guidance. It's currently listed on our website, and I highly, highly recommend that folks use this as a guide as they're completing their application. It has, as it says in the title, qualifications, and really is a walkthrough of the application and what the application is asking you of. And so I really see it as a hands-on tool that you have throughout the entire application process in ensuring that you're really meeting all of the requirements as listed. There's another tool that a lot of the pieces from this presentation are from, and that is the Qualified Applicant Guide to Obtaining a License. It's on OCM's website, and the idea is to provide an overview of the license process, the pathway to licensure, and to really learn some of those key terms. So I only shared 2 of the key terms that were listed in there, but that applicant guide has a series of a number of additional key terms that we use within the office that you will see in a lot of guidance documents that I think could help ground you as you are pursuing a licensure. I would also encourage folks to review the cannabis license and endorsements type chart to better understand the allowable activities per license type and endorsements required. And so we talked about the 3 different license types today, and we talked about the various endorsement types. We have a chart on our website that really breaks each of those down and allows you to see the various license types and which endorsements are applicable and which endorsements are and allowable activities are associated with the various licenses. And then I would also say, follow along on the from start to license, your path to cannabis licensing in Minnesota chart to identify where you are in your pathway to licensure. So that was one of the first documents that I showed in this presentation, where we're really talking about where are you? We're all kind of in that step 1 phase of preparing to apply for licensure, and being able to use that as a guide throughout your process. So as you move from the actual application process to it being submitted, to the review process, to the other activities that you'll have to do, whether it's with local government, background checks, so on and so forth. And so it really is a helpful visual in being able to see, this is where I'm at right now, and this is where I'll be along the process. And I will just note, all of these guidance materials are on the Office of Cannabis Management's website under businesses. And so under businesses, and then I believe it says licensing, you will be able to find all of these resources. My hope is to also be able to get this posted on our YouTube, and on that YouTube, we'll also have a link to the page in which you can find all of these guidance materials. In addition to some of the reviewing some of the guidance that we have, We also encourage you to begin thinking about where you may want to locate or operate. Of course, it is not a requirement upon submitting your application right now. However, we encourage folks to research local zoning regulations, build relationships with local government partners, and begin thinking about where you might want to locate and operate across the state. Um, we also encourage you to start your application early, but take all the time you need to review it. I always tell people review it again, have somebody else take a look at it, make sure that you're not leaving any sections blank and that you're really ensuring that it is your best work and that you are, when you have that final stamp of approval from your team or from yourself, that is when you should submit it. But just take your time um, in being able to get all of that information in. And lastly, please interact with our office. OCM cannot provide business advice or specific application support, but we can and are able to assist with any user issues in navigating Acela. So the Acela portal, which is the portal in which the application process is hosted on. You can also reach out to us if there are specific questions, I'd say, around like some of the guidance materials. And so being able to help you navigate, similar to what we're doing right now, about accessing various guidance and such. And so you can always reach out to us at cannabis.info@state.mn.us. Um, We also want to just highlight the importance of working with local governments. Local governments will play a key role in oversight of the state's cannabis industry and a critical role in the licensing process. Local governments can establish zoning regulations and may limit the number of retailers and mezzo-businesses allowed within their locality. OCM recommends that you begin building those relationships with local government. Of where you want to operate to learn about their zoning requirements, the process for retail registration, and if they may be limiting distribution of local retail registrations. And so we have a guide on our website that was really designed for local governments, but really anybody can take a look at it and is really meant to be a guide for folks to understand the process for that local governments are pursuing right now. And so right here, this is a bit of a visual of how you can access some of these resources on our website. So the ones that I mentioned earlier today, that is the qualified applicant guide to obtaining a license. That is the cannabis business license application review and qualifications guidance, the license and endorsement types chart, the path to cannabis licensing in Minnesota, and then our FAQ page. All of this can be found on this page. If you go to mn.gov/OCM and then click on businesses, and then you'll be able to navigate and see all of these resources and be able to link to them, download them, and be able to continue to follow along with them. All right. So now that we've gone through a lot of our guidance materials and really just talked through the three different license types, just to get us started, I wanted to take some time to walk through many of your pre-submitted questions. I will say there was a range of them. Some of them are about licensing. Some of them are specifically about like allowable activities of the various license types. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to address each of those. And of course, we'll make sure that these also get onto our FAQ page on the Office of Cannabis Management's website. So our first question is, do I need a specific location already selected at the time of applying? If no, how much detail, if any, is required for security plans? And the response here is a physical premise is not required as part of an initial application for cannabis business licensure and provides the applicant no advantage in the review process. However, it is necessary to read each application question carefully to distinguish if you're being asked to attest that you will do something or if it is asking you to write and include what you plan to do once a location is secured. If the question itself includes, if applicable, it is required that you provide the requested information, even if the information is preliminary or for planning processes or purposes. If the words "if applicable" do not appear in the question, applicants must still respond accordingly. Applicants must respond to all questions on the required templates for their license types. Writing "not applicable" or "NA" is not sufficient unless specifically noted. Applicants must also be mindful of questions that explicitly note what should be included. And so it's really important to use that application guide and be mindful of uh, what are the specific things that the question is asking for, and ensuring that you're including all of that information. An additional thing to note is that a physical premise will be required later on in the application process prior to licensure after an applicant is granted qualified status. I will go to our next question. What information should be included in a preliminary business proposal for a micro business license? The preliminary business plan section of the application will request information such as the expected size of the business, anticipated growth of the business, methods of record keeping, knowledge and experience of the applicant and those associated with the business, and plans to address environmental concerns. For a full list of the requirements needed to complete this section, we do refer you to the Cannabis Business License Application Review and Qualifications Guidance. I will just again emphasize that this will be an extremely valuable tool in making sure that you are incorporating all of the required information that is asked of you within the various questions within the application. We also ask that folks answer these questions to the best of your ability and make sure to provide all the requested information as described in the guidance. The next question we have is there anything we need to have in advance established prior to filling out the application? And the response here is OCM requires applicants to have minimal established information prior to applying. This will differ per license type, but one item that all applicants can expect to have ready is proof of trade name registration provided by the Minnesota Secretary of State for the company name. For more information on how to register your business with the Minnesota Secretary of State, you can visit the Secretary of State's website. I believe this FAQ is also on our website, but if not, we can make sure that these links are there too. You must also be prepared to provide copies of articles of incorporation and bylaws, operating agreements, shareholder agreements, partnership agreements, promissory notes, or security instruments that exist for your business. For a full list of the requirements needed to complete a license application guide, again, we refer to the Cannabis Business License Application Review and Qualifications Guidance. Are proof of funds required for the application? OCM does not require an applicant to have all of their funding figured out at the time of applying. However, OCM does require that all applicants show proof and explain all their current funding sources at the time of applying. Furthermore, applicants will not have an advantage or disadvantage based on the amount of funding they may have at the time of applying. You must also be prepared to provide copies of articles of incorporation and bylaws, operating agreements, shareholder agreements, partnership agreements, promissory notes, or security instruments that exist for your business. As a condition of converting a preliminary application approval to a cannabis business license, OCM will require the applicant to update their funding sources once finalized. What does OCM want in the capitalization sections? OCM will require the applicant to list out all the true parties of interest and ownership of the proposed business in the OCM provided worksheets. This should include all individuals listed in the applicant's disclosure of ownership and control worksheet, including 0% owners who have true party of interest. For a full list of the requirements needed to complete the capitalization table, again, we refer you to the Cannabis Business License Application Review and Qualifications Guidance. Does a sole proprietor need to have an established trade name at the time of applying? And the answer here is all applicants must provide the trade name registration documentation provided by the Minnesota Secretary of State for the company name with an assumed name or doing business as name listed on the registration if applicable. For more information, you can visit the Minnesota Secretary of State's website. For the trade name requirement, is that assumed name or incorporation name? And trade name registration will be documented through proof of registration with the Secretary of State for the company name with the assumed name or DBA on the registration itself. If the applicant is an LLC, it should submit its certificate of organization from the Minnesota Secretary of State. And if it uses a DBA, it should also submit its assumed name filing that was made with the Secretary of State. Will OCM be providing applicants with opportunities to fix their applications? Applicants who successfully complete and submit an application may be given an opportunity to fix mistakes and errors through a request for more information process. Applicants will be given 14 calendar days to respond. OCM will provide instructions on how to complete this process. However, it is the applicant's responsibility to submit a complete, accurate, and timely application. The next question is, can microbusinesses have a delivery license as well? And the answer here is no. Per Minnesota Statutes 342.28, microbusiness licensee may not also hold a delivery license. Per Minnesota Statutes 342.41, only the following license types may simultaneously hold a cannabis delivery license. That is the cannabis retailer, the cannabis wholesaler, the cannabis transporter, and the cannabis event organizer. Our next question that was submitted is, can micros and mezzos sell the cannabis they cultivated to other retailers? And the answer here is a micro business and a mezzo business with the cultivation endorsement will be able to grow and sell the cannabis flower they cultivated to other cannabis businesses if it meets OCM testing standards and complies with statute 342.25. The next question is, are endorsements an additional cost? No, endorsements are not an additional cost. An endorsement is a selection of authorized activity an applicant makes, which enables the license holder to partake in the designated action. Please review our license and endorsement chart that I mentioned earlier for more information about different license types, allowable activities, possible endorsements like the medical endorsement structure that allows a cannabis business to serve both the adult use and the medical markets. And just ensure that you are able to take advantage of this resource. And it is located on our website. And so we'll make sure that once this gets posted live, that we do have that link to that. Does a medical cannabis combination business require endorsements to operate? So the question was, does a medical cannabis combination business require endorsements to operate? And the answer here is no. Minnesota Statutes 342.515 enumerates all activities that are permitted with the medical cannabis combination business license. These activities are contemplated by the license and do not require additional endorsements. Depending on the activity, such as retail, the business will require local approval and registration as provided in Minnesota Statutes 342.22. So we didn't speak too much about the medical cannabis combination business today, but this is a good point to make regarding this license type. Is a medical cannabis business limited to only selling medical use cannabis and cannabis products? No, the medical cannabis business license is one of 4 license types that can be vertically integrated under Minnesota statutes, section 342.515. A medical cannabis or a medical combination business may cultivate, manufacture, and sell cannabis and hemp products. And then this next question is, can cities limit the number of micro businesses in their jurisdiction? And the answer here is local governments may limit the number of retailers and micro businesses / mezzo businesses with retail endorsements allowed within their locality as long as there is at least one retail location per 12,500 residents. Local units of government are not obligated to seek out a business to register as cannabis businesses if they have not been approached by any potential applicants, but cannot prohibit the establishment of a business if this population requirement is not met. If you are an applicant seeking a microbusiness license and intend to also seek a retail registration to conduct retail sales, it is recommended to be in conversation with the local government with jurisdiction over the retail registration process early to learn if they plan to limit retail registration, how the process will work, etc. And so that is the conclusion of the questions that folks had submitted for this session. And so I do want to note that any questions that you guys may have submitted during the presentation, we will be using that to further our guidance on our website. We'll continue to use that to update our FAQ page. And so please take the time to reach out to cannabis.info@state.mn.us if you have specific questions about license types, as well as anything from this webinar as well, as we want to make sure that as we are continuing to do these office hour series and really continuing to listen or to gather your questions in advance, that we're really addressing some of the needs. In addition, if there's any confusion about any of the guidance documents that we have, we really encourage you guys to be able to share that with us so that we can make sure that we are making any clarifications and we're sharing that widely with you. And so again, thank you guys so much for participating today. I appreciate you taking the time. Please feel free to register for the next few office hour series taking place next Tuesday and Thursday on a couple other license types. And continue to send us questions, continue to navigate through this licensing process, and take advantage of the resources that we have on our site to guide you through this process. And so thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.